expert is Daniel Khayat, the head of product at HTC Vive. Daniel has been a pioneer with HTC and Vive in the fields of high-tech and XR, with tremendous experience in supporting organizations in implementing new technologies to improve their businesses and customers' experience. So Daniel will talk about VR in education. And without any further ado, over to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Kat, and thank you, everyone. I was also glad to be part of Sriji's contribution to their Excellence Center with VR, as you've seen there. Let me share my screen and take you through how we see VR in education reimagined. Is it clear? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it. Brilliant. Thanks, Daniel.
Excellent. So to start, thank you everyone for having me. We're very excited to be part of the education experience that we would like to add value to your audience. And when everyone think about VR, they always think it's for gaming, it's for gamers, but with the evolution of the technology, it's now within enterprises, within education, within architecture, design, and many, many other verticals. To start with, we have seen different technologies around us that are evolving, from robotics, blockchain. We've seen 5G, we've seen everything impacting our life. And with the introduction of new technologies, things are going very fast around us, and we are seeing different elements of those technologies that at some point we are forcing ourselves to implement them or to integrate them within our whether organizations or our education sector. However, with us today, hopefully with the different presentation that you have seen, you will be able to really identify the areas that are really future-proof and are really beneficial for us in order to prepare students and to prepare educators as well for the next generation technologies. For us as Vive, we are working on an exponential tech offering where we are helping you to get the best out of the opportunity of with whatever technology we have in hand. However, we know and we see different challenges that are facing us as educators and us as tech experts driving the technology moving forward. If we look at schools, and especially from our perspective, we've seen schools before, and we are looking at how schools will look in the future. And as you see, we haven't seen much of changes between what the school was and what the school is going into. Hopefully, with the likes of such events, we can work together on seeing different evolutions of schools, especially when it comes to the work environments, to the centricity of the focus, which was initially around the student himself, the student herself, and the educators, where we are now going into hopefully a much better experiential learning experience, where the learning centricity is around the group, is around a personalized curriculum, as we've seen in different cases studies, and whether it's around a project that we work around and we learn from more of the different elements that really takes us into understanding and delivering a proper experience. Hopefully, with this, we've seen also that in education, when we discuss, most people think that education is only by educating children, and those children are the center of our focus, which is great. However, with that comes a big problem. We haven't seen much of evolvement from the days when we were students at school, and nowadays I can say at a large percentage of the schools around us, with few exceptions. However, the curriculum is still where it sits in a place where we are getting challenges and we're struggling in order to implement some of the elements. At most of the cases, we are seeing students, in order to expand their horizons, we have to create something on its own, identical, on its own an excellence center, on its own extracurricular activity. However, our societies are changing, the jobs are changing, and in previous presentations, I've seen a lot of people talking about how we can prepare those students to jobs that are not yet existing and jobs that didn't exist a few years back, but it will exist in the near future. From a technology perspective, we've seen in the 80s the introduction of the PCs. We've seen computers, laptops started to be part of our day-to-day lives. In the 90s, we've seen the World Wide Web, where we have the large access of a library of material and areas where we can see big data. However, the way how we can access it, the way how we can really filter it, and the way how we can get it to students, it still requires our input as educators. The introduction of the mobile has changed our lives a lot, whether from the way we get information to communicate with each other, or the way we are getting those endless number of notifications and distraction that are not keeping us or maybe our kids to be 100% focused on education. These are the challenges but opportunities that we are living with, and we learn, and they will learn to live with in the future. When it comes to the 10 years after the 2000s, we've seen the introduction of virtual reality, an immersive experience where, as I mentioned earlier, started with gaming, then bit by bit started with industrial introduction, and now we are seeing it more and more in education centers and in schools and universities. And now we are witnessing the integration of an extended reality experience, where we are seeing that headsets or glasses are evolving in a way that it's becoming lighter, it's becoming less complex to use, but with a horizon of new set of applications, app stores, verticals, and different elements for us to use and to experiment. However, earlier we used to just see, with the introduction of the PC and the smartphones, simple ways of interacting and communicating with inputting messages and accessing through a keyboard or through the touch screen. And it was considered at that time the best tool for inputting different establishment communications. Now with VR, we are seeing a much better evolution in order to interacting with the outside world, whether it's just a standalone experience, whether it's controlled by a controller, whether it's through hand tracking, whether it's through elements or gadgets. Here I've seen some which is related to gaming, but those also can be mounted to any type of tool in order to teach kids in schools or in different institutions how to use those tools safely, with cost-effective element, and to make sure all this is being in a properly controlled educational environment. Not to forget that the data that the eye tracking is providing through learning management systems and highly filtered data analysis softwares, where they can give educators a proper information in order to get feedback about the experience, about the evaluation that students are going through, in order to help them improve and get the best out of their experiences. Having said that, with XR, we are delivering a full brain and body learning, which means we acquire real knowledge and ability around what we are able to use. This will help us exchange and interact with the real world through a virtual world. Those interactive tools will inspire us from being gamers in order to implement this gamification element, so we can showcase a much better experience when it comes to learning. Here I've got with me few ways in order to delivering lectures that we started with some of our partners, and some of the schools are using them, but I would like to share them with you.
The reason that Kyrgyzstan and southern Kazakhstan have such high seismic hazard is that they lie along the Tian Shan mountain belt. This is a region of high, several thousand meter mountain peaks that separates the dusty deserts of China from the flat Kazakh platform extending out to the north.
Here in the science,
as you can see in this image, it's an extensive mountain belt, and the mountains have this alignment east-west. This is Lake Isyk-Kul. It's the defining feature of the.
Another example also on a different type of classroom.
To deforestation causing destruction of homes for the animals, we have poaching. Illegal poaching is common in the forests of Peninsular Malaysia. These poachers come from neighboring countries like Myanmar and Vietnam, and they come here to hunt the animals, not only to eat, but also to sell the fur for illegal wildlife trade. The clouded leopard. You might know what a clouded leopard is. We have the tigers, the largest carnivore that we find in Southeast Asia. Then we have the leopard and the clouded leopard, a relatively less known species. In terms of size differences, we have the tigers, the largest one, followed by the leopard and the clouded leopard. It's a relatively less known species. It's so called because of its cloud-like patterns on its fur, as you can see on the picture here. And its distribution range from the mid of China to all the way south in Peninsular Malaysia, where this study was conducted. So, because this is a relatively less known species and is also very charismatic, it appeals to the wider public in terms of its conservation value. In order to better protect this species, this study was conducted aimed at.
So with those a couple of examples, I would like to shed more light on what makes it much more different from the current traditional way of having the education environment, whether it's a traditional classroom or maybe a classroom through Zoom or through Teams or through any online platform. So as you can see here, technically both the instructor and the students will have the headsets on. So technically they are remotely accessing this virtual environment. The educator has the capability to control completely the entire environment, the room where they are. So he or she will be giving the access to those students, whether they can mute them, they can freeze them in the space so they won't move around, or whether they give them the flexibility to move around and discover the environment around them. The main basic PowerPoint presentations or any keynote presentation can be full, any videos, any 3D models. As well as you can see here, he was able to bring animals from the jungles, talk about this experience and explain in details how things are working around. You as educator, you know very well the power of seeing things in reality compared to just talking about it, or compared to seeing an image, or compared to seeing a video, experiencing how strong was this message by seeing people hunting those animals, which leaves a proper impact when it comes to people remembering and understanding the concept. Another example here with a campus where the future of remote learning, whether it's at a school or university level, also that I would like to share.
Virtual world learning platforms that allow for blended learning, including the ability to host lectures, engage in group projects, attend student fairs, play serious games, receive coaching, and compete in simulations. We have started to create and support custom online campuses for universities. The University of California, Irvine has had students utilising Verbella to join lectures, meet with professors during office hours, and collaborate with fellow students to work on real-world problems. Meanwhile, our development team has developed resources to foster learning and collaboration, as well as tools to research data-driven assessment of leadership and team cohesion.
Another tool, as mentioned earlier, extremely powerful, as you were able to see, people who can be wearing their headsets or can access remotely on the 2D screen, depending on the tools they have in hand. We were able to see different platforms, different environment, different areas of the classroom where they can teleport from. The teacher can take them from a science lab to a museum to a traditional classroom, depending on the space and the environment they are required to be in. Having said that, there are multiple hardware and software in order to use and implement as well. Here, in the example, we've seen more and more schools and education center adopting this technology. You can see some of the tools are what we call them the AIO, which the all-in-ones headsets, where the headsets is all equipped with everything required, whether it's a battery, a processor, a screen, and everything around it. In the example with the blue headsets, and in the example with the young students where they are connected to a PC, where you need high graphics and high interaction with the different 3D elements that might require a PC VR experience. Finally, few examples of few schools and education centers around the world that we don't see any difference compared to what we have in our region, and we don't see why not to have those. You can see from schools with few headsets, 5, 10, equipping a small lab with the applications that can be run depending on the choice of the teacher or the educator, to up to a higher capacity of applications and higher experiences, so they can set up the entire organization or the entire experiences all around in order to work remotely between people on campuses and people off campuses, or different classrooms or labs to adopt the XR technology. So the big question is how we prepare our children or students for the next normal. The tools are with us now, whether in AI, whether in XR, whether in other technologies from hardware and software. For us, we are ready to support on few demos by coming to your school, showcasing you the power of the technology in your hand and how this technology will be helping through the examples that I have given. We've also given few examples around the AI, some of the learnings, and here I have with me a few books for you that we recommend at Vive in order if you want to read, if you want to go through. At the center is Ready Player One, which shows as a movie also available, that really shows the power of virtual reality and extended reality, and the gamification element as its center, so we can see how people are thinking, how kids are learning through those small gamification factors implemented. A little bit about the pedagogy of our educations and how it's evolving, so we can see how and why and when we can start introducing those technologies to our kids. A little bit on AI also, with some recommended books and personal AI tutors for educators in order to read and in order to evolve themselves.